Last spring, our board approved a practice of splitting our offering plate every Sunday, in keeping with our mission, purpose, and calling. We're pleased to be able to partner with organizations whose values dovetail with ours. This month, we share our plate with the League of Women Voters, a nonpartisan grassroots organization dedicated to ensuring everyone is represented in our democracy. Instructions for giving will be on the screens, tell you how to give on text, online, with a check, and also will be on chat for all of you folks in Zoom.
Long, long ago, in a faraway land, there lived a singular man named Osamu, high above the sea on a hilltop. As he weaved his sails for the ships that came into harbor, he could see the green salt marsh below dotted with cranes. The cranes' primitive sounds filled the air much like this. Osama thought, how beautiful the cranes are. Of all the birds, they are the most like sails. It is as if the wind was held or is held in their wings. Yet Osamu was lonely. While he was steadfast in his purpose, the weaving of sails, he hoped for someone with whom to share his life. Autumn came, the season of storms. One night, as the winds howled, Osamu heard something strike his door. Curious, he looked out. There lay a great crane, stunned and still. "Oh, poor bird," he cried, kneeling. Gently, he folded its wings and carried it inside. How delicate this bird was. Osamu warmed it next to his fire, and for 3 days, he nursed the crane back to health. Then the crane soared away as he watched. Time passed, and another great storm blew in from the sea. Amidst the noise of the pelting rain, he heard a knocking on the door. When he opened the door, there stood a beautiful young woman shivering in wet garments. Osamu invited her in, allowing her to warm herself by the fire. He served her tea and rice. When finally she stopped shivering, he began to ask her many questions about her origins and travels. Yet all she would tell him was that her name was Yukiko. Time passed, and Yukiko stayed. A love grew between them. With no words spoken, Yukiko became his wife. Yet Osamu was still a poor sailmaker, and a time came when there was not enough food for the two of them to eat. Yukiko saw this and offered this proposal to her husband. "I will weave you a magic sail that you can take and sell in the village, but you must promise me to never look at me as I work." After some protest, Osamu promised. Yukiko pulled the dressing screen across the room, hiding his loom, which sat near the window. Yukiko worked all night while Osamu slept. In the morning, when she appeared, she placed the sail in Osamu's arms. Though immensely strong, the sail weighed nothing at all. A sound like a faraway whispering lifted from the folds. Osamu forgot the exhaustion on Yukiko's face. It was like Yukiko had woven in the wind. Osamu ran to the village and was paid enough gold to live for half a year. Time passed, springtime came, and the white cranes returned. It was in late spring that the gold ran out. This time, Osamu said, "Yukiko, you should weave another magic sail." She replied, "Oh, husband, I cannot, for it takes all that I am to weave such sails." Still, Osamu insisted, vowing never to ask again, and because of her love for him, Yukiko agreed if Osamu promised not to look upon her while she worked. 2 days later, Yukiko emerged exhausted. Thinking only of gold, Osamu ran to the village and sold the magic sail. Autumn and the storms returned. While Osamu was in the village, a wealthy ship's captain found him and promised Osamu a lifetime of gold if he would weave just one more sail. Osamu remembered his vow to Yukiko, but a lifetime of gold? When he demanded that Yukiko weave another sail, she became very afraid. "I cannot," she pleaded. "These sails take so much from me. It is my very self that they take." Yet Osamu commanded her to weave this sail. 3 days passed as Yukiko worked. Never had she worked so long. Osamu, well worried, wondered why he could not learn the secret of weaving in the wind. Unable to contain himself, Osamu ran around the screen and stopped. A long beak swung towards him. Sad black eyes gleamed at him. There stood the crane he had saved in the storm. The bird was weaving its white feathers into the sail on the loom. Filled with sea wind, the feathers were trembling. "Yukiko!" But the only sound his crane wife could give was a soft, strange sound like a cat purring in the bamboo reeds. Then Yukiko spread her tattered wings, lifting herself through the window and into the sky. Never again did Osamu see her. The mission he thought he shared was no more. He returned to his solo purpose of weaving simple sails for the rest of his years, gazing at the marsh and the white cranes. And each autumn, in the season of storms, he waited for a knock on his door.
I invite you to place both feet on the ground. Scoot to the edge of your pew, and let's take in a deep breath together. And exhale. Listen to our breath. I invite you to take another deep breath. And exhale. Now I would like us all to sing. We're going to sing one word, one pitch, one nonsense word. We're going to sing Lu. So, Lu. Okay, good. Now, I'm going to invite us to sing that again. Do what hand does, okay? Lu. Good. Now we're going to sing Lu again. And we are going to start on this side of the room. We're going to start with a single Lu, and as I come across the space, I invite you to join in on our Lu, okay? And then I will get all the way over here. Then as I come back across, I would like you to dissipate, okay? Lu. Take in a breath together. And exhale.
How did that feel? You know, when you give shape to energy, it becomes powerful. Directing our energies towards a common cause influences our environment and ourselves. And that's the power of mission. And that is what we are about today. So my task is to somehow make mission relevant to cranes. Yeah, mission accepted. Okay, I mean, I set the trap for myself. I'll spring it. What I'd like to do is actually take a cue from the memory practices of oral traditions and rivet something necessary but banal onto something beautiful. I'd like to map the structure of a congregation onto the elegant being of a sandhill crane. So we'll start with the bones. The sandhill crane can stand as tall as 4 feet. And depending on how tall I think I am, I think that might be about that tall. It's that tall. So in order to support those elongated frames, the bones of cranes are surprisingly, though necessarily, strong for a bird. But of course, they're also light enough to fly. So can we make an analogy to the bones of a congregation? Our bones are our organizational structure, expressed in our bylaws and policies. And without these, we'd be a blob of feathers and skin. We'd be unable to move. As such, our policies, like crane bones, should be strong but light, which I think in this analogy means not overly wordy, right? And not overly legalistic, comprehensible, applicable, functional. So our structure, our polity, our bylaws and policies need not be bird-like bones, excuse me, but rather crane-like bones, light but strong. So a creative aspect of these beautiful birds is that they mate for life, right? That's another thing I'd like to draw our attention to, is that they mate for life. And that knowledge sort of twists the knife in that crane wife story too, by the way. Cranes mate for life. But in the crane wife story, Yukiko is forced to fly away. In real life, cranes renew their vows every year by engaging over and over, year after year, in annual rituals of seduction. So I confess, rites of seduction makes for a tricky analogy in the congregational perspective. Don't make it creepy, preacher. Now, I suppose some of you might think of our annual congregational meeting as a renewal of vows, and an act of institutional seduction. But if that's you, there's something wrong with you. Get a doctor. By the way, the cranes do this primarily through the medium of dance. And look, I'm pretty sure that not all cranes are awesome dancers, right? Especially as they get older. Cranes live to be like 30 to 40 years old. They might lose a step or two. And you know who cares about that? Not the cranes. Not the crane's spouse. Hi, Katie. I don't know about you, but that gives me personally a lot of hope. It might even be that this dance is less a demonstration of prowess and more of a demonstration of vulnerability. I'm going to do this ridiculous dance for you, baby, and you still love me. I might ask for a volunteer, yo. There you go. I still love you. This coupling, renewing, and dancing has to do with belonging and care. So I'm going to say that it's similar to our measure of belonging and care, which is, to my mind, our covenant, which we also don't exactly have right now, but we will. And what I like about this analogy is that it is reviewed and renewed every year, and that its renewal is through an embodied act. Our covenant is a promise, but a promise is nothing without action, without embodiment. So sandhill cranes make their promise, and then they demonstrate its truth and renewal over and over, year after year, and it might involve leading with some vulnerability. So when we get around to making our covenant in a month or so, we may have to consider including something about vulnerability in there, or maybe dancing. Which, now that I mention it, does open up a digression I very badly want to pursue, which will require some vulnerability on my part. And so here's what this digression boils down to. Congregation, it's going to be better for you if you shake your booty. It will. Not right now. Thank you, though. Not necessarily during our reflecting together, but during the music-making parts of the service, I want you to feel free to get into it, to stand and rise, however you might do that, or even as you're seated, and let the music move your body. When humans dance together, it actually changes your brain chemistry and opens your heart to one another. It's an act of vulnerability and creativity and fun. And as it so happens, those are the ingredients of spirituality, connection, and meaning. And Kai pointed out to me, as we talked about this earlier in the week, that much like cranes, you don't have to be Shakira or Astaire. You need to just move with the music. So Kai, if you would, is this dancing? Is this dancing? Yes. Is this dancing? Okay. Was that dancing? Yes. Okay, so you don't have to dance. You don't have to dance. But I bet if you do, to the band, to hymns, you'll be more spiritually alive by being more bodily involved. Okay, got it? Back to the crane analogy for the congregation. That was a necessary digression. So we've got bones as bylaws and dance as covenant. Now, the mission of the congregation. The mission is lovely. The mission is our wings. The mission is that which gives us flight and propels us into the world, into the sky, into the spirit world, up, up, and away to our destination. And that's what we're trying to do today, to lift off. Today, we're not just reflecting on mission, we're going to make some moves. Maybe dance with it a little. Dance here being a metaphor for using our phones to craft a mission statement. So before we get to that, we may want to spend a little bit of time reflecting on mission itself. But you may prep by taking your phones out, yes. Now, chances are you've all been associated with organizations that used mission to orient the work, be it a sports team activist organization or a business, and I'm not going to patronize you by going on about something you're already familiar with. So just a quick review, but flavored by the specifics of congregational setting. Simply put, mission is purpose, our reason, our why. It addresses the fundamental question, what are we going to do with our one glorious life together? Determining a congregation's purpose clarifies decisions and refines the programs, services, reflection topics, board discernment, and overall direction of the church. Focusing on our purpose makes our actions more effective, efficient, and measurable. So today, an important opportunity for you to shape our mission as a congregation. What is it we should do together? What do you need? What makes you come alive? What does the world need of you? Now, here I want to warn that there's always a risk, especially in congregations, of confusing the articulation of a mission for the doing of the actual work. Like, we think that saying we are a welcoming congregation or an anti-oppression congregation means that somehow we magically and automatically are a welcoming anti-oppression congregation, just because we like the idea of thinking of ourselves that way without really needing to do the work. This is the team good, I'm on team good problem, where we confuse heroic declarations about ourselves with actual accomplishments. It's why more you use than you'd think thought they were anti-racist when really they just thought that everyone else should be anti-racist, and then went on perpetuating cultures of white supremacy. We have to do the work. There's no substitute for work. Whether it's getting the vote out, living a more meaningful life, being compassionate and non-reactive, there is no cookie unless you make the cookie. Mission must be diligent in testing all we do against its standard. And this is why mission needs to be reasonably specific and grounded. I see many missions stranded on the shoals of concept rather than plan. And as we've all witnessed this week, a plan is a plan, whereas a concept of a plan is as substantive as a Cheeto. A good mission, grounded in reasonably specific attributes, clarifies decisions. It refines programs, services, reflection topics, board discernment, and the direction of the church. The overall equation is something like this. Because making such and such our mission, we covenant to do so and so, which is institutionalized in our bylaws and policies. Because we want to make cookies, we each bring ingredients guided by the recipe. Because we need to fly, we dance together on strong and light bones. So how do we discover our mission? Usually it is done with a series of all-church meetings and cottage meetings, and then a murmuration of wordsmiths get together and craft the input into something that is loquacious and sensical. This method casts a wide net and imparts a feeling of investment through input, but it takes a lot of time and can be an exercise of ego. So I want to try flipping the script. I want to generate your input rapidly. With guidance from my team on ministry, I'll take that input and refine it to a few possible mission statements for the council to review and present to the board. And then we'll deploy the selected mission statement and use it throughout the year as a draft version, sort of a beta test. And in the spring, we'll gather feedback on the draft, make the necessary adjustments, and vote on it on our congregational meeting. And that starts right now. So if you take out your phone, open the camera setting, and you could, do the click thing on that, or you can go to slido.com and enter that set of numbers, which I can't see. Okay, alternatively, if you're at home, there's a link in the chat also, or you could still do the picture thing. And there's also a link in your email waiting for you when you get home. If you're on our mailing list, and this all seems a bit too much right now, you have until the end of Wednesday. And if you're a guest here this morning, please feel free to play. But I hope a whole bunch of you, and I think I saw a bunch of you, open it right now and go to the Q&A tab on the top of the screen. Do you see the Q&A tab on the top of the screen? Go to the Q&A tab on the top of the screen. Now, in keeping with theme of flipping the script, you're not actually going to ask any questions in the Q&A. The Q&A is not for questions today. It's for answers. I'll ask you a question and you will answer it in a moment, but before you answer, one last instruction. When you're in there, when the answers start flowing, and if you see an answer similar to yours already in the Q&A, then there is no need to include your own. Just click on the like, okay? As other responses appear, you can click on those likes also. You are unlimited in your likingness. If you don't see an answer similar to yours, go ahead and type away. So go ahead, and if there's, I can't see, are y'all typing questions? Good. Or answers. Type the answers. The question will be, where's the question? As a religious community, what would you say is our single most important purpose? As a religious community, what would you say is our single most important purpose? Answer the question. Don't ask questions. Answer the question. What is our single most important purpose? And then like the ones that you like. The ones that get liked will move to the top. You can like as many as you want. And you all can see the results live, right in front of your very eyes. So that's kind of fun, right? Now, all of this that you are generating right now, and there's another tab that you'll go to later called polls. You'll take a poll. All of this stuff is input, not gospel. It's meant to discover what is most important to you. And this specific in-church exercise is meant to titillate you into doing the service or survey and completing it when you get home. So now I'm just going to ask you to put your phones away, cruel as that may be, and you could finish doing this later. It'll be open until Wednesday. So this is the first step of doing the work. We'll aggregate and eloquate and turn your wisdom into mission that will allow us to soar, to be effective in your life and in the world. And this is how we lift each other. This is how we are lifted and lift the world. But for now, set your phones down so that we can integrate all that we have done this morning. As we prepare to draw our sacred time to a close, this time that we have all crafted together and co-created, let us do so knowing that the wisdom in this room and in the community beyond this room will provide the power for us to change ourselves and the world. After the announcements, let's go in peace.
Go lifted up, love bless your